Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar, A Seat at the Table. My name is Tracy Blackstock. And before we start, I just want to apologise to you all that I'm having some technical difficulties this morning, and so my camera is not working. And I was just saying to the panel that I did my makeup and everything this morning. But anyway, we will continue, and we have jam-packed hour. So I am really thrilled to be kicking off National Youth Work Week with all of you here today. So today we have an inspiring panel, including our very own Oxfordshire Youth Young Trustees, Progression Coach and Operational Manager to explore key topics in youth work, youth leadership, equity, community, and building positive relationships and futures. So for the next hour, let's dive into some meaningful conversations about the impact and potential of youth work. Feel free to join the discussion by sharing your thoughts in the chat. And once again, thank you for being here and supporting us, as well as wanting to engage in conversations around the powerful role of youth work. Okay, so let's kick off with a round of introductions, and then I'm going to go to Emma Jane.
Thanks, Tracy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emma Jane. I'm one of the Young Trustees at Oxfordshire Youth, and I chair one of our subcommittees with a particular focus on an area of our work.
Nabila.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name's Nabila. I'm also a young trustee at Oxfordshire Youth, and I'm also studying my undergrad at School of Oriental and African Studies.
Isabel.
Hi, I'm Isidore Siri. I'm a young trustee also for Oxfordshire Youth, and then kind of in my personal life, I am a public affairs and media officer for the UK's advertising regulator.
Misako.
Hello everyone, I'm a progression coach at Oxfordshire Youth and part of the YPSA team.
Paddy.
Hello everybody, I'm Ademola Adediro. I'm the operations manager for YPSA. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you all. So let's get started with a couple of questions. Like I said, we've got an hour together, and we'll have opportunity to also answer some of your questions. Still feel free whilst the panel are discussing various topics to add any comments in the chat, and we'll have some time at the end to sort of go through those. So the first question then, or in terms of area of topic that we'd like to explore, is looking at youth leadership and empowerment. And I'm going to speak to Nabila in terms of just getting your understanding how it's been as a youth trustee. How has being a youth trustee influenced your sense of leadership and responsibility within your community? And can you share with us a time when you felt truly empowered to make a difference?
Amazing. Okay, so I feel like this is necessary. I'm going to give a bit of context. So I started as a volunteer at Oxfordshire Youth when I was 17. I didn't go down the traditional education route, which I think is very important when talking about my journey. So I started at sixth form in 2020, and I didn't have a great time with my A-levels and my experience at sixth form overall, so I did end up dropping out. That was when Oxfordshire Youth was introduced to me, and I got pretty much stuck in with the first thing that I could see, which was the podcast. So I've always had a creative, every bone in my body has always been creative. I've always wanted to implement that into anything I could do, and it was just really hard to find a platform. So at 17, when I was introduced with this amazing opportunity at Oxfordshire Youth, it was just perfect for me. And since then, I had taken many different leadership roles, different opportunities, which I'm convinced I would have never been able to see or involve myself in these types of opportunities. And I took many different roles. I hosted podcasts, took my own initiative in thinking of discussion points. It was such a creative space where we could talk about me and the other young people that were also involved. We could talk about topics that were really important to our generation. We did so many different topics. Off the top of my head, we did a topic on the importance of being British Asian. So I've British Asian background. I'm Bengali by ethnicity, and I just remember it was just such a light way to talk about such heavy things with other young people, and that really did introduce my skill, which I use in absolutely everything I do. I'm 20 years old now. I have a part-time job. I'm at uni, and I'm a young trustee. I use that same skill that Oxfordshire Youth helped me with, of leadership, of decision making, of planning, these key things. And I cannot tell you that I haven't implemented that in my present projects, present jobs, present roles, anything like that. It's something that really set a foundation for me. So since I was 17, I had always been a part of Oxfordshire Youth. I don't think there's not been a time where I've not been doing something with OY. So I ended up joining the Youth Awards Committee as well, which that was honestly, I can't even tell you how amazing that was. I think what's really important on my journey is that I actually put my hand up to ask if I could host the whole award show. Like, that's crazy. Like, I would never have imagined a 17-year-old me put my hand up and around that committee table and be like, can I host the whole youth awards? And I was open arms. Literally everyone on the committee, the staff, they encouraged me. It's the environment that also really pushed me to honestly be the way I am. I don't think things like confidence, speaking skills, public speaking skills, it was all something that I felt like, because I wasn't in sixth form, I wasn't in the college, traditional like education steps. I felt I felt insecure, and I didn't feel like I would have those spaces to flourish in, the ways that my peers did. But youth work really did. I feel like it helped me even more. And I feel like compared to my peers, like perhaps I've gained a few more, like, through my development of missing out in sixth form, and being surrounded with the comfortability and amazing support from youth work from Oxfordshire Youth. It's something that I could never not see in my work or in the future as well. As long I really am grateful for the opportunities that I had. Gosh, there's so much to say. I feel like an example of when I felt really empowered, I have to say, was on the stage at the New Theatre in Oxford. It was 2 years ago now, which is crazy because I feel like every time I talk about it, it's like it happened like a few months ago. But I guess that sort of tells you how critical it was to my personnel. Like, I feel like that time I had to think on my feet. There was a time where a video was playing, it was an acceptance video, and the audio stopped working. And I'm sure you can imagine a theatre full of like an audience full of like people, the team on the sidelines. It was just awkward silence. And I just thought on my feet, and I was like, okay, let me just read the subtitles. So I just I just quickly read the subtitles as it was playing with no audio. And I don't know, I feel like that moment, it was silly, but I think it really did start something, like something in the way that I see work, the way that I see, the importance of working with young people, because we have potential. We have far more potential than I feel like most adults like can, you know and think. But yeah, I think that's probably a good roundup of how I have felt empowered, especially as a Asian girl. You know, I grew up as the only Asian girl in my school. Things like representation and my lived experiences, I was really able to put that into Oxfordshire Youth in my time as being a volunteer in youth work. And I feel like I am trying my best to translate that and transfer that into being a young trustee. You know, it's my way of giving back, I feel like. But yeah.
Thank you, Nabila. That's fantastic. Wow, there's so many gems from that. You know, and just some sort of, you know, you're talking about representation from creative spaces, your own lived experiences, getting up on the stage in front of hundreds of people at 17 years old. That's fantastic. What a true inspiration. Thank you so much. As I said, there will be an opportunity to have pose any questions at the end. So let's kind of move on slightly then to talking about equity and access in youth workspaces. And I'm going to direct my question over to Emma Jane. And so this is very much about access. So it's posing the question around, have you ever faced any barriers in accessing youth workspaces, and what changes do you feel would make these spaces more inclusive and accessible for all young people?
So I'd start by saying that I've benefited hugely from access to particularly uniformed youth groups, which I'd say we'd consider a kind of youth work, providing that space to protected space to nurture young people, help them learn about the world, develop those relationships. But when we say youth work, and particularly in Youth Work Week, I'm looking at it with capital letters, about that universal access with youth workers. And that's something that growing up, I never had access to. It just didn't exist where I was. Naturally, I saw my first ever youth club in Oxford, far beyond the point where I should have been able to use it. So, and I'm speaking from a position as a professional youth participation practitioner. So when for work I was at the UK Youth Parliament residential a couple of weekends ago now, I was looking at these young people thinking, gosh, that used to be a little bit of me. And I'm also sitting with a whole range of youth workers, qualified youth workers, unqualified youth workers, all of us youth participation practitioners, and thinking, I could have gone into youth work. I could have become a youth worker because I feel like I'm part of this community and I love it and I understand it. But it's something that was never given to me as a path of particular value. As a young person, I didn't have that youth work access, and I certainly wasn't provided it on a path to higher education. You know, going off and becoming a youth worker wasn't really presented to me as an opportunity that was seen as valuable, as unique, despite the fact that I know and see and feel all of the skill and the knowledge and the nurture that goes into it, and so do young people. So I think for me, in terms of increasing access, first, we've got to have those spaces. We've got to have investment in creating them, maintaining them, publicising them, ensuring they're right for the young people in the area as well, but also investing in our youth workers, in the people who are there literally holding up young people's aspirations and selves. There is so much that's just about getting on with life in youth work, in understanding how a young person is experiencing their world and taking that time to work alongside with them through it, which you don't see, I'd say, in many other areas, in education, for example. And I'd say that the primary barrier for me was not being able to get in the door because it didn't exist. So we'd invest in that. And secondly, never being able to get into that space afterwards because everyone around me was not treating youth work with sufficient value. That maybe it wasn't for someone like me, or maybe it wasn't something at all. It was just, it was just young people. So since then, I've dedicated my life to creating spaces for young people, about shouting about the intrinsic value anyone has. I often talk about, being young is one of the only forms of oppression you go out of. Once you turn 18, people legally have to listen to you for the rest of your life on that ballot vote. And it's about investing in a stage of life that's so critical, so formative, and about getting that right.
Amazing. Thank you, Emma Jane. As I said, again, you know, some real gems there, and it'd be really interesting to get a discussion point from what Emma Jane has just described in terms of access to youth workspaces, and you know, talking a bit about your own lived experience as well. So fantastic, thank you, Emma Jane. Okay, so staying on the theme of equity and access in youth workspaces, we have the pleasure of having a progression coach, Misako, who is working on the front line, working with young people in Young People Support Accommodation service. So, Misako, how do you address diverse needs within your work to make youth work accessible for all backgrounds, identities and abilities? And could you give us some examples that you could share in terms of overcoming those challenges to make this a sort of reality, sort of in real terms?
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I think like when it comes to kind of accessibility and equity, there's a lot that could be said from the YPSA perspective. I think the first thing is understanding that each individual in our service, it has a complex of different needs, and not generalizing it to kind of all young people, but understanding the complexities that make someone a person, and knowing that not every young person comes from those same equal opportunities for their future paths. So kind of not that one size fits all. And what's, I think, quite good within the YPSA is that each individual has their own individualized support plan and goals. So we really make sure that we're meeting their needs. And it's understanding with equity, you know, like one young person who gets out of bed is just as good as another young person attending college. So, you know, even though they look very different, and some people might argue, you know, it's not, the matter of the fact is, like, it takes just the same amount of effort, and those goals are equally, like, can be celebrated. So I think it's really understanding that. I also think it's understanding, like, the barriers that our young people face and how it makes them feel, and how that feeds into their own self-narrative. So, you know, for example, we might think that something might affect them, but it's actually listening to their story, their perspective of it. And then I always think with the young people that I work with, they always have the answers, you know, so it's kind of picking up from what they say, and just piecing it all together. So, yeah.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So I'm getting a couple of things from that as well. So in terms of not one size fits all, and every young person is an individual. And when we talk about equity, it's also ensuring that some individuals have more of a more opportunities than others, or you know, have more capability than others, and it's leveling the playing field, so to speak. And you know, I like that bit that you said about achievement and goals are individual based. And yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much. Again, there's opportunities to sort of pose questions at the end as well. All right, so we are almost halfway through, and so we're going to move on to community connections and belonging, one of my favorites. So I'm going to come back to Emma Jane, and also Addie's also going to engage in a conversation around community connection and belonging. So in terms of, can you describe then to me, Emma Jane, or to the webinar, how youth work has helped you connect with your community, and strengthen your sense of belonging? I know you talked a little bit about the work that you're currently doing. Yeah, and if you can talk a little bit about what aspects of youth work were most impactful in this.
Yes, so of course, I think it's essential for me to reflect on my personal experience in saying that sometimes young people can feel like they are defined particularly by educational achievement. That's such a huge part of that life stage for young people, that actually having a space to discover discover myself and anchor my sense of self-worth and capacity and belonging in what other people saw from me and invested in me outside of that space. I think when you're a young person, your bubbles can be quite small if you think about it. A lot of people might think about fun and then work and school, but actually, particularly for a young person who's not regularly in those bubbles, what's incredibly valuable is stepping outside that normal and saying, do you know what, I'm going to stretch my skill, my understanding, my connection in different areas. Having lots of different people to rely on rather than a couple. I think it's that diversity of links, which has been really key for me, and saying, actually, this person, because they took a different approach to me, saw something that no one else would have seen. And also because you hold them in a different regard. I think if you've got a parent or carer who says, you know, you can do anything you want, you might say, well, yes, I recognise that that's the role. But when a youth worker says to you, I really believe that you can do anything you turn your mind to, that's something that stays with you. Because that person has no reason, you think, other than what you've shown them to believe in you. And you really feel it, and it can help shape the rest of your life. I think if I also reflect on my approach as a trustee, so one of my roles is to ensure that the charity is really connected to other service providers, to other people who are interested and invested in youth work in Oxfordshire and in young people's futures. And joining OY really showed me the sheer number and the diversity of people who are all invested in the art of the possible, in doing fantastic things. I think particularly when we're thinking about funding, we're thinking about conversations about youth work, we're thinking sometimes about challenge. And it takes a moment to be in the community and sit and say, do you know what? There is a real beauty in seeing everyone work together and shout about the incredible energy that young people have in the work that we've done, that we're doing together, and we intend to, because the world isn't waiting for people to grow up. We're here and we're doing it now. So that sense of belonging has been fostered by connecting with a range of other people who share similar approaches, but also that very personal connection with someone who you feel has no reason to believe in you, but gives you that chance every single time to prove yourself to them on your own terms. And I think that's been the really critical part of it for me, which is enabling young people to show up for themselves, no matter what they may have done before, no matter where they've come from before, but absolutely thinking always to the future and thinking about doing it together.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. Lots of stuff in there. I'm going to come over to Addy just to kind of extend a little bit on, what Emma Jane's saying, but more specifically, how does he see youth work contributing to a stronger sense of community for young people? And is there any specific activities or approaches that are particularly effective in fostering this connection? And so, Addy, you're again, in terms of frontline staff, working predominantly in YPSA. So it'd be really good to kind of get a steer from you as well from that angle. You're on mute.
Hello. Thank you very much, Tracy, for that. The first thing I need to basically say is that, I've since working with YPSA, I've been here for about 8 months now. I've worked on other supporting network before, and I find in the last 6 months that basically say that youth work can play a very transformative role in building a very strong sense of community for young people by creating a safe, inclusive, safe environment for people that we work with. I've worked with young people here, especially with an owner company that was coming into a new space, a new community setup where they don't know anybody, they don't have any clue how things goes. And it's difficult. It's difficult when you see those coming into the service where they are predominantly new to everything, and you have to basically start from scratch working with them. That's why what Masako was talking about in terms of individuality comes into play. You have to take individuals as a person and individuals do have their own different journeys. So in terms of that, youth work and offers a space where young people can find acceptable and safe space for themselves, basically making them feel part of the community, which reduces isolation, especially coming from abroad or coming from somewhere where they've never been before. It might even be they're coming from somewhere totally different from Oxford, where we're based, and they're coming to a new setting. They're coming to they're meeting new people, working with progression coaches that they've never met before. So all these things, a lot of things will be issues around trust, relationship will have to be built, and it takes a lot for that to happen. So and for that to happen, I believe it fosters belonging. The most important thing is for us to basically make them feel comfortable enough to be able to say, I do feel I'm part of a setup, I'm part of a team, I'm part of something that's all happening here. Also, it gives them it also helps with empowering them in terms of being able to have a voice within the setup that they're coming into. And this is done. I've seen examples. I've seen a lot of cases where we've taken young people into, doing activities or coming into youth clubs on Tuesdays in the evening, where we have to plan new ways of working. We have to encourage a lot of people that comes in to understand how we work, what we want to do, how we support them. And by doing that, by giving them a chance to have that decision-making voice where they can say, yes, I'm part of what's happening in that youth club. It empowers them to foster a sense of ownership as well, which allows them to then say, yeah, after a while that we're doing the right thing, or they are doing the right thing, coming into a space where we provide that level of empowerment and structure for young people. It also develops in terms of youth program, youth develop also provides an opportunity to build social communications and leadership skills that only it's difficult. We when I come across young people that we work with, we tend to assume that they do. There's a lot of things that it's just there for them to use or to take or something that they used to, but it's not. It's difficult. And I always believe that in order for them to engage well or do well within that setting, it is very important that we provide an atmosphere where leadership skills can either be taught or they can easily get into being able to say this is how things should be done or this is how we want things to be done. And also it is also very important to listen to them. We have a lot of people with various backgrounds coming into the YPSA setting, and at times we as workers we have our KPIs. There are times we want to just basically say, oh, these are the things that we want to do, and these are the things this is how we do things. But it's most important that we listen to them. We listen to what they're bringing in, because they do have a lot of benefits that they can bring into the setup as well. So we do need to listen to them a lot, so that we can incorporate their ideas, and encourage them to bring those ideas on board whenever we're doing things with them. It's also very important, like I always say that when I talk to staff and young people, I always talk about connection. How do we connect? How do we, as a professional, and also as some UIPSA young people, how do they connect with what we're doing? And by connecting with that, it helps them to connect to the wider community that they are in, either through the religious programs, either through education or employment opportunities around where they are currently living. It is very important. That connection is what's most important. Some people will come into a space, and within 2 or 3 days, you will know they are isolated from everything that's going on. So it's now left for us as YPSA staff members to say, how can we support this individual to link up with the wider community that they're working with? And there are so many approaches that we can take. We can organize youth-led community services projects like charity workshops and other things for them to get involved with, which helps in basically bringing them together so that they can understand where we're coming from, and also we understanding them. And also we can plan youth-led initiatives, i.e. the youth club I've mentioned before. It does encourage young people to create and lead their own projects. We've done it before in YPSA. The youth club we normally do. When I think it was the second day I started work with Oxfordshire Youth YPSA, that we got them in a room and we were basically saying, this is your club, this is yours. So how do you want it to be led? And the rules and everything was actually championed by them, which kind of creates what I said before in terms of ownership. It helps them to understand that this is ours, this is our space. And it also helps them to respect that space and also to bring new ideas on board. And that's helped a lot. I've seen, we've taken young people on activities that we've always encouraged them to bring ideas on board in terms of what they want to do, how they want to do things. And when we take them out there, they perform excellently well in terms of, being the trips and activities being very successful. And also, the one other thing I wanted to talk about is culture. We also it's very important that we need to identify and recognize different cultures that comes into the setting. It helps in terms of engaging young people in creative projects. Like, we need to start celebrating diversity within what we do, and it also helps with the impact of this allows young people to express their identities and appreciate other people within that group. So overall, I'll just summarize it by saying that I wrote it down, but I forgot.
There's a lot there, and I think you've really.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say.
I'm saying it in a way that's, in a real positive and quite inspirational. I love the bit you're talking about connection. A lot of what you were saying is about that connection and that diversity, equity, but also understanding that young people who non-accompanied asylum seekers, in particular, you were saying that's a really important part of your work to ensure that they feel that sense of belonging and connection, but having that empathy and understanding of their circumstance and the complexities of that, right? So and that's a skill that does take time and over a period of time, and the cultural differences as well, environmental differences, right? There's so many different things that you have to think about, that they're having to think about and address and deal with. And as so yeah, I'm really appreciative of that. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of say?
Yeah, just to summarize by saying that youth work contributes to a stronger sense of community for young people by actively involving them in shared experiences. That's what I wanted to bring out. In shared experiences, promoting positive relationship between the communities that we are in, and also helping them feel a sense of responsibilities towards the community that they either they come from or where they're in now. It helps a lot in basically building self-esteem and confidence going into opportunities outside YPSA.
Thank you so much. Right, so we've got some real gems there again in terms of community connection and belonging. Very kind of rich kind of conversations about those two areas that are very important parts of the role of youth work in the community and the work that we do, and the insight that's required in order to be impactful and effective. Okay, so moving on slightly to another theme that's relatable to youth work, community and building communities and equity is youth work's role in building positive futures. And so I'm going to come over to Izzy and Isabel and pose a question to you. In what ways has youth work influenced your personal goals and aspirations, and what role do you believe youth work should play in helping young people envision and achieve positive futures? I know that's a bit of a long one, but I know you can answer that.
Yeah, So for me, kind of as a bit of background, so I was involved in goal guiding since the age of 4. I kind of joined as a rainbow, went all the way up till I was about 16. So kind of that form of youth work has had a really massive impact on, it's kind of shaped my whole life. And when I was about 14, kind of one of the youth workers in goal guiding kind of was the first person to introduce me to politics. I kind of fell in love with it. That was how I even realised that that's something I'm interested in. She kind of realised this, and then kind of used her own connections to organise a trip for us to go to Parliament, so I could really explore that passion. And you know, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for youth work, you know, politics has now become my career. So it's had, you know, that much of an impact on my life that it's kind of shaped the direction I've gone in with my career and my personal interests as well. So kind of my personal background aside, you know, I think that as a story in itself shows that everybody, you know, should be having access to youth work, because youth work has a potential to have that positive impact on everybody's lives. And I think the amazing thing is that everybody's going to have a different story. It's going to have a different impact on everyone. And I think that's why, you know, that universal access is so important. So kind of for me, if I was to summarise it in 2 ways, I think kind of being involved in goal guiding and also being involved in Youth Voice has kind of given me 2 things. So I think the first thing is that it's given me the opportunity to surround myself with outspoken, confident and inspiring people. So when I was about 14, I became a national spokesperson for goal guiding, and kind of, so along with 10 other girls from the age of about 13 to 24. And I think kind of being in the room with those girls was the first time that, you know, 14-year-old me could stand there and say, you know, I'm a feminist without getting mocked or laughed at. So kind of having that opportunity, and, you know, this really, I think, echoes what other people have been saying today, is, you know, giving young people that opportunity to be in a space with people that they can look up to and people that are going to listen to them and teach them that, you know, what you believe in is something you should be proud of and that your voice is valuable. And then kind of secondly, I think, again, echoing what people have said from their own experiences, is that youth work has kind of taught me how to be confident. It's taught me how to stand up in front of a room of people and talk about what I believe in, confidence to, you know, take on the role of being a young trustee and sit around a table in, you know, professional and adult situations that are probably really scary, but actually have the confidence to be able to do that, I think, as a young person can be really hard. And I think if I hadn't had my own interactions, you know, with the youth work sector, perhaps I never would have had the confidence to become a young trustee. So yeah, kind of just to summarise that all really, I think I've carried my experience of youth work through uni to the workplace. Now I'm never going to be afraid to say how I feel in a situation. And I never would have been in this position if it hadn't been for youth workers giving me a platform, training me and teaching me that, you know, my voice isn't just valid, but it's actually a very valuable voice at the table.
Thank you, Isabel. Yeah, absolutely. Youth voice and your voice is valuable and essential to everything that we do, and on so many different levels. Something I feel really passionate about. So thank you so much for that. That's great. So staying on the topic then of youth workspaces or roles in building positive futures, Misako. So from your perspective, how does youth work prepare young people for their future paths, whether it's in education, employment, personal growth? What additional support do you feel is necessary to ensure every young person has a chance to thrive?
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I kind of think like what helps young people like with their future is just like, as youth workers, really focusing on the relationship with the young person, like building that trust, building that safety with them. because I actually think if you focus on that relationship with them as a priority, those outcomes are just secondary to that. You know, they then have the confidence to apply for work, or feel more confident in themselves and boost their self-esteem, or like find out what their goals are and their values are. So I think, you know, the importance of youth work is being relational focused with the young people, and getting to know them and what their barriers are. Because I think it's important that we as youth workers understand that our young people have already these inherent skills. We just kind of tune into that and raise their awareness on it, but it's not that we're giving them confidence or we're giving them this and that. They've got it. You know, we're just there to kind of support them with that and their journey and just be part of that. I think, you know, in terms of your question about additional support that's necessary for every young person to kind of have the opportunity to thrive, is collaboratively working with other agencies and services, because every professional has their own perspective, and everyone's is valuable. So it's kind of learning from other people, and getting that multiple perspective, because sometimes, you know, we might have a young person tell one progression coach one thing, and then the manager something else, and then someone something else, and a mental health service something else. But if we can all come together, we can all provide them with the same support to kind of be the best for them. So yeah, that's what I think.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, great. So we have approximately 10 minutes. So we've kind of gone through 4 key areas. We've looked at youth work, youth leadership, sorry, and empowerment, equity and access in youth workspaces, community connections and belonging, and we've just kind of talked through youth work roles and building positive futures. So I'm really kind of keen to sort of open up the space for us to sort of talk just more candidly, in terms of any questions that the audience may have, but then also, before I go to the questions, I want to pose one more question, I guess, to the panel members. And so this question is about, which is, you know, the title of the webinar is A Seat at the Table. But ultimately, what I would pose to the panel is, how would they define the art of youth work? And I put it to you in one sentence, if you can define to the audience what your definition of the art of youth work is. And I'm going to come to Nabila first.
What a great question. So the way that I would answer that would probably be, I mean, art is what you make yourself. So youth work it is accessible for absolutely every personality, every background. There is always going to be something that you can create out of yourself. It's all up to you. And I think that's, from my experience as well, that's what really helped me grow and flourish as well. So yeah, I think that's what I would answer to that.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. Isabel.
Yeah, that is a really good question, and definitely a tough one to answer in one sentence. But I would define the art of youth work as inspiring, developing, and nurturing the voices and minds of tomorrow.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to pause there for 1 minute, and I'm going to come back to that question for the rest of the panel members. We've got a couple of questions in the Q&A section. So we've got quite a big one question from Mia, which is, how do we get intergenerational collaboration into the mainstream, where we have young leaders and voices elevated to the level that they deserve? Really interesting question, right? I'm happy to kick off with this question to sort of see what people's thoughts are. So I think personally, I think there's needs to be, when we're talking about intergenerational collaborations, there needs to be sort of a deliberate strategy to sort of bridge the gap between generations and to sort of create meaningful partnerships. So what this is kind of talking about is the sort of young people, all different ages, that collaboration, yeah. And one of the ways you could do that, which is one of my favorites, is mentorship, mentoring programs, mutual learning spaces, where you've got sort of mentoring, you've got younger and older generation who can learn from each other. Instead of this sort of traditional top-down mentoring sort of system or approach, it could be a sort of more of a reciprocal collaboration, right? And that's also where young leaders, we've got a digital natives program starting shortly. And there's an opportunity to share those insights, new ideas, whereas potentially older leaders or youth leaders may be a bit more seasoned and may have slightly different strategies and guidance. And that is that shared experience. The other one is considering youth representation in different decision-making spaces. Again, it eliminates a top-down and it's a kind of more of a collaborative space. Inviting young people in to attend, a bit like the youth trustees. But it's not just hearing young people's voices, it's being a real part and pivotal part of the decision making through policy, through guidance, through influential making decisions that can impact hundreds of thousands of people, that level. Yeah, so I kind of started answering that question. I don't know if anybody wants to chip in, but I'm imagining that's part of the question, is that intergenerational collaboration. Addy.
And also from the point of view of YPSA, the purpose of coming into the service is to learn new skill sets. And those new skill sets are very important in bridging that gap. When they come in, a lot of people that comes into the YPSA might not have known how to clean. Let's just put it as simply as that, or not know how to write CVs, or not know how to, or get employment. And that's why when they come in, the first thing we always try to do in YPS is look at, there's something we call EAT, which is employment opportunity, or employment, education, and employment, education, and training, which is very important. Those three apps, in terms of when they come in, we train, we kind of look at what are their needs and what are the skill set that they will need to do for them to grow. And the purpose of that is so that they can, obviously, when they learn new skill set, they can go into whatever they want to go into. And we've seen examples of young people that come to the service like that and are basically doing extremely well, making decisions of their own and doing great things after they've left us. So it's very important that collaboration is very important. It's very important in terms of making sure that they have the necessary skill set for them to be able to move on and do better and do a lot of things after YPSA. And that's the work that's the major work that we do. Hopefully you see people in the future, like you have the young trustees now, they're basically part of the decision-making process of OY. which helps because they've got lived in experience as well, and other people that we work, we currently supporting or working with actually have living experiences that will help them in terms of being able to work in various leadership roles in the future.
Wonderful, thank you. Emma Jane.
Two quick answers from me, Tracy. I think one is that we need to make sure the spaces are right for young people rather than slotting them into a structure that's been designed functionally around the needs and capabilities of adults. So sometimes it's about reimagining those processes and thinking about, are we talking about a table at all? Is it right that we're around a table? Sometimes that's the answer. The other thing is not thinking about young people as something to be unlocked or defrosted tomorrow. I often say we have paediatricians now because young people have very specific medical needs now. Let's think about actually focusing on what young people are capable of today. Absolutely, as Masaki said, it's not about waiting to give them something. It's thinking about young people being ready.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add one thing in terms of that question as well. It's about normalizing this practice as well. It's a collaboration. So it's not something we do to young people or for young people or they're the future. It's what is essential is having youth voice in the present.
Yeah.
Because the present defines everything else, the future. It's really important to for us as youth workers, but within this environment, to ensure that that becomes the norm. And so we're empowering young people. Not every young person wants to be a leader, but we're empowering young people, but also fostering that sort of mutual respect as well.
That's right.
At various different levels. Yeah, not just when things are not going right and we need to get young people's voices. It should just be etched into everything that we do. Okay, you can hear that passion and very kind of inspired, and I'm loving the fact that we have managed to spend 1 hour talking purely about youth work on the first day of National Youth Work Week. We are running out of time. We've got 1 minute left. And so I am going to bring the webinar to a close, but I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining. Thank you for being patient with my technical difficulties today. As I said, I made a real effort this morning to be ready and got my red lipstick on, so unfortunately not getting to see that, but you can hear my voice. And we've got the beautiful faces of the panel members. And thank you, audience, for listening to youth trustees as well as YPSA professionals as well. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I bid you a good afternoon.